Dad gave me $90 and kicked me out saying, "This is for your trip, bye." 3 years later I became a good businessman, and they came to ask for help to pay off sister's loan. Thanksgiving was always a bit of a circus in our house, but not in the warm, fuzzy, chaotic way you'd hope. It was more like the Sarah show, with my sister in the lead role, my parents as her cheerleaders, and me sitting in the audience wondering why I bothered to show up. This year was no different. Sarah had landed another amazing opportunity, an internship at a big-name marketing firm. She went on and on about the people she was meeting and how it was setting her up for success. My parents hung on every word, nodding and smiling like she was solving world hunger. Then came the inevitable moment. "Alex," Mom said, fixing me with that look she always gave me when Sarah was around. "You should really be inspired by your sister. Look at what she's accomplished. You need to start thinking about your future too." I clenched my jaw. It wasn't the first time she'd said it, but something about the way she said it right there at the dinner table, with Sarah beaming at me like the golden child she'd always been, made me snap. "Are you serious?" I said, pushing my plate away. "She gets everything handed to her. You've paid for every little thing in her life, her college, her trips, her new laptop, and then you turn around and tell me to be inspired. What am I supposed to do? Pull myself up by my bootstraps while you keep throwing money at her?" The room fell silent. Dad put down his fork and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read at first. Then, without a word, he pulled out his wallet, rifled through it, and slapped a stack of bills on the table. "Here," he said, sliding it over to me. $90. That's for your trip. Bye." For a second I thought he was joking. "You're kidding, right?" I asked. "No," he said, shaking his head. "If you're so unhappy here, you can leave. There's the door." I looked at Mom, hoping she'd say something, anything, to stop him. But she didn't. She just sat there, staring at her plate. And Sarah? She wasn't even trying to hide her smirk. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. "Fine," I said. "I'm done." I left the money on the table, went to my room, and started packing. I didn't take much, just some clothes, my laptop, and a few essentials. I could hear the muffled sounds of them talking downstairs, but no one came up to stop me. As I carried my bag out to the car, my dad didn't even look up from the TV. "Good luck out there," he said, as if I was just running an errand. I drove for hours that night, not really sure where I was going. I ended up at a gas station off the highway, parked in a corner of the lot, scrolling through my phone for jobs. That's when it hit me, they really didn't care. Not enough to stop me, not enough to check if I was okay. Nothing. I spent the next few days sleeping in my car, showering at gas stations, and eating the cheapest food I could find. Eventually I found a job at a motel that came with a small room as part of the deal. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. I tried calling home a few times in those first weeks, but every call went to voicemail. After a while, I stopped trying. That was the last time I saw or heard from them for 3 years. Living out of my car was humbling, to say the least. My savings were almost non-existent, and those first few weeks were a matter of survival. I quickly learned that gas station bathrooms weren't the worst places to clean up, and if you parked under a streetlight, you'd feel a little safer sleeping in your car. I also learned to stretch $10 for days. Ramen, bananas, and peanut butter were my staples. The motel job saved me. It wasn't glamorous, but they let me clean rooms for a small paycheck and a place to stay. The room was tiny and smelled of mold, but it had a bed, a shower, and a lock on the door. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a hobo. I worked long hours cleaning up other people's messes, but at night I scrolled through online job boards. I told myself it was temporary. I wasn't going to spend my life scrubbing toilets and making beds. One day, while cleaning a guest room, I noticed a flyer for a local hardware store. They were looking for a stock clerk. I called the number on my lunch break, and 2 days later I was hired. The hardware store job paid better, and they didn't look at me like I was a charity case. My boss, Pete, was a gruff but fair guy who didn't care about my past or why I looked like I hadn't slept in months. He just wanted someone who could move boxes and show up on time. I worked there for almost a year. During that time, I learned everything I could about the products we sold: tools, cleaning supplies, housewares. I started to see patterns in what customers bought and how the store operated. It fascinated me. Pete noticed, too. One day he pulled me aside and said, "You're a hard worker, Alex. Have you ever thought about moving up? We could use someone on the sales floor who really knows their stuff." That was my first promotion. It wasn't much a bump in pay and the chance to talk to customers instead of just unloading loads, but it made me feel like I was finally getting somewhere. By my second year at the store, I'd saved enough to move out of the motel and into a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I even bought a better car, a used Toyota Corolla that didn't look like it belonged in a junkyard. That's when the idea hit me. I'd spent so much time at the hardware store that I'd started to notice gaps in the market: products customers wanted that we didn't carry, or items that could be improved. What if I started my own company? It was a crazy thought, but once it took root, I couldn't shake it. I started small, selling household items online. I'd buy things wholesale, mark them up, and ship them myself. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Slowly but surely, my online store grew. By the time I hit 3 years on my own, I'd gone from barely scraping by to making enough to buy a small house. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. I didn't think much about my family during those years. Every now and then I wondered if they'd even noticed I was gone. But I never reached out to them again. I figured they were busy doting on Sarah, as usual. Then one day my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer it. "Hello?" I said. There was a pause, and then a voice I hadn't heard in 3 years. "Alex. It's Dad." For a moment I thought I must have misheard him. It was strange to hear his voice after so long. He sounded older, more tired. "I know it's been a while," he said. "But I need to talk to you. It's about Sarah." I remained silent, not sure what to say. He took that as permission to continue. "She's in trouble," he said. "Financial trouble. She borrowed money to buy a new car, one of those luxury ones, and now she can't make the payments. If she doesn't come up with the money soon, they're going to repossess it. And everything she's paid so far will be gone." I let his words hang in the air for a moment. "So?" I finally said. "She needs $20,000 to pay off the loan," he said, his voice almost pleading. "We don't have that kind of money right now, and well, we heard you were doing well for yourself. Can you help her out?" I didn't answer. I just said, "I'll think about it." And I hung up. Sitting there in my office, surrounded by the success I had built from nothing, I couldn't help but laugh. After 3 years of silence, they were only calling because they wanted something from me. But the strange thing? I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. After that phone call, I couldn't get it out of my mind. Not because I felt bad for Sarah, she'd made her choices, but because of how surreal it was. 3 years of nothing, and the first time I hear from them, they're asking for $20,000. It wasn't even a casual check-in or an apology. Just straight to the point. For a few days I debated what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore them, let them deal with the mess they'd made. But another part of me, the part that remembered how much it sucked to feel abandoned, thought maybe I should at least hear them out in person. So I decided to go. When I pulled up to the house in my car, a shiny black BMW I'd bought a few months earlier, it was like stepping into a time machine. The house hadn't changed a bit. The same chipped paint, the same overgrown lawn, even the same rusted basketball hoop hanging over the garage. I parked in the driveway, and as I climbed out, I saw the curtains in the living room move. Someone was looking out. When I got to the door, my mom opened it. "Alex," she said, like she wasn't sure it was really me. "Hi, Mom." She stepped aside to let me in, and for a moment we just stood awkwardly in the living room. The walls were still covered with family photos, most of them of Sarah. My dad was sitting on the couch, and when he saw me, he stood up. "Hey, Alex," he said, nodding as if we had just met last week. Hi, Dad. Then Sarah came in. She looked different. Still polished and put together, but there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. A kind of tension, like she wasn't used to being in a vulnerable position. Alex, she said, smiling like we were best friends. She came over and hugged me. I didn't hug her back. We all sat down in the living room, and for a few minutes no one said anything. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. Well, he began. We're glad you came. We weren't sure you would. I didn't say anything, just waited. Look, he continued. We explained everything on the phone, but to put it simply, Sarah's in trouble. She needs $20,000 to pay off her car loan. If she doesn't pay soon, the bank is going to repossess it, and all the money she's put into it so far will be wasted. It's not just the car, Sarah added. If they take it, I'll lose my job. I need the car for work. Right, I said. And you're asking me to help? They both nodded. Okay, I said. They looked stunned, as if they couldn't believe I would agree so easily. You'll help? Sarah asked, her voice almost hopeful. Yes, I said. I will help. But first I need to say a few things. The room fell silent again. You kicked me out, I said, looking directly at my father. You gave me $90 and told me to leave. Do you have any idea what that was like? I slept in my car. I showered at gas stations. I worked jobs nobody else wanted just to survive. And not once did any of you call or check up on me. Now, 3 years later, the first time I hear from you, it's because you want money. Do you realize how fucked up that is? No one said a word. Sarah looked down at her hands. My dad shifted uncomfortably. But you know what? I continued. I'm going to help you. Not because you deserve it, but because I don't want to be like you. I don't want to turn my back on people when they're struggling, even if they did it to me. Sarah started to say something, but I held up a hand to stop her. This is the last time, I said. After this, we're done. I won't be your safety net. I've moved on, and I don't want anything to do with you after this. They didn't try to argue. Maybe they knew I wasn't bluffing. I stood up, pulled out my phone, and transferred the money right there. It's done, I said, putting the phone back in my pocket. Good luck. And with that, I walked out the door. As I got into my car, I saw them watching me through the window. I could see the relief on Sarah's face, the guilt on my dad's, and the conflicted look on my mom's. But I felt nothing. As I drove away from that house for the second time, I knew it was different this time. There was no anger, no bitterness. Just closure. A week after I left their lives, I felt lighter. True to my word, I hadn't looked back. Helping them was the last chapter in a book I was ready to close. I threw myself back into my work and didn't think much about them. Then one night, as I was leaving my office, I found a thick envelope under the windshield wiper of my car. There was no return address, just my name scrawled on the front. I looked around, but the parking lot was empty. Curious, I slid into the driver's seat, opened the envelope, and pulled out a handwritten letter. It was from Sarah. Alex, it began. I know this may not mean much to you now, but I have to tell you the truth. The letter was long, and as I read it, my chest tightened. She admitted that she'd known about Dad kicking me out before it happened. She had overheard him talking to Mom about me and had kept quiet. She even admitted that she liked the idea of me leaving because it meant I wouldn't be around to challenge her perfect child status. I was selfish, she wrote. I thought if you were gone, I'd finally be enough for her. But I was wrong. They didn't idolize me because I was special. They idolized me because I made them feel good about themselves. The truth is, I'd been miserable for years trying to live up to an image they'd created for me. And when I couldn't keep up, I'd borrowed money to keep pretending. She explained that the car loan wasn't just for work, it was a desperate attempt to maintain the lifestyle they expected of her. The pressure had finally caught up with her. But the part that hit me hardest was near the end. I used to think you were the unlucky one, she wrote. But now I see it differently. You got out. You built something for yourself. You're free in a way that I'll never be. I envy you, Alex, and I'm sorry for everything. Not just for what I did, but for who I was. The letter ended with her phone number and a simple request. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I know I don't deserve it, but I hope one day you can forgive me. I sat there for a long time, staring at the letter. I wasn't sure what to feel. Sarah had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I'd spent years resenting her for that. But now, for the first time, I saw her as human, flawed, struggling, and trapped in the same toxic dynamic I'd escaped. I thought about crumpling up the letter, throwing it away, and moving on. But something stopped me. Instead, I folded it neatly, put it back in the envelope, and drove home. I didn't call her that night. I wasn't ready. But for the first time in years, I thought maybe, just maybe, I might be. 2 months passed after I received Sarah's letter. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to say. The version of Sarah I knew, the perfect, untouchable favorite, was hard to reconcile with the person who'd written those words. Then, out of the blue, she called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Alex, she said, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I really need to talk to you. I sighed. What's going on? It's Mom and Dad, she said. Things at home, they're not great. They're hovering all the time, asking where I'm going, what I'm doing, if I'm fixed yet. It's suffocating. I wasn't surprised. They'd always been controlling, and I could imagine how much worse it would be now that Sarah wasn't the shining star they once thought she was. I've thought about leaving, she continued, but I have nowhere to go. And I was wondering, would you let me stay with you? Just for a little while. Until I save up enough to get my own place. I leaned back in my chair and let her words sink in. A year ago, the idea of helping Sarah in this way would have been laughable. But now? All right, I said. But just so we're clear, this isn't permanent. You'll pay your share of the bills, and as soon as you can afford a place of your own, you're out. Got it? Got it, she said, relief in her voice. A week later, I helped Sarah load her things into my car. She didn't have much, just a few suitcases and boxes. As we packed, she told me how bad things had gotten. They keep talking about you, she said. How you've turned things around and how I should be more like you now. It's like they flipped the script. You're the golden child, and I'm the disappointment. I couldn't help but laugh. Welcome to my world. The drive to my house was quiet, but not awkward. For the first time, it felt like we were on the same page. When we got to my house, Sarah looked around, impressed. This is really nice, she said. You've done well for yourself. Thanks, I said, unlocking the door. Your room is down the hall. Make yourself at home. Living with Sarah was interesting. At first it felt strange to have her around. She was still polished and meticulous, but little cracks were starting to show. She wasn't as confident as she used to be, and she was a little lost in this new version of herself. But in time, we settled into a rhythm. She got a part-time job at a coffee shop, and we started having real conversations about our parents, about the years we'd spent apart, and about the mistakes we'd both made. One night, as we sat in the living room watching TV, she turned to me and said, I know I've said this before, but I'm really sorry, Alex. For everything. I know, I said. And for what it's worth, I forgive you. She smiled, and for the first time, we felt like equals. A few months later, Sarah had saved enough to move into her own place. When the day came for her to leave, I helped her pack again, just as I'd helped her move in. As we loaded the last box into her car, she turned to me. Thank you, Alex, for giving me a chance to figure things out. I don't know where I'd be without you. I shrugged. You would have figured it out. You're tougher than you think. She hugged me, and this time I hugged her back. As I watched her drive away, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. We had both come a long way, and for the first time I wasn't angry or resentful. We weren't perfect, but we were family. And somehow that was enough.